Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Parkitect. So last time we... Oh, have to click that. Last time we went over Western Roundup, and finished the scenario. And I forgot to go over this kind of structure right here. So after you complete each scenario, you kind of unlock, I guess, like a trophy, kind of. And it's usually one of the buildings that, like, come with the scenario. So we got that. And yeah, that was that. And now we're going to be moving on to Coral Caldera, set on Coral Island. So it's kind of like just a really pretty tropical island in the middle of nowhere. So it's in the middle of the ocean, and the park entrance fee has to stay free. So that's kind of like the main challenge, I think, of this. I don't think we've had a scenario where it's had to stay free before, but we're gonna get right into it and check out what we get to work with. So we have all of this land, so pretty big, and then there's this ocean surrounding it. I don't think we get to build into the ocean. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we don't. So we get to stay over here, and we have access to the carousel, the bumper cars, the teacups, and the wave swinger. And then we get the Enterprise, which is really nice to have right off the bat, and the swinging ship too. Then for coasters, we get the Junior Coaster and the Wild Mouse, which is very typical to start off with that. We get the monorail, which might be fun to incorporate, and then we get the log flume and the paddle boats, which I could see us maybe using the paddle boats to kind of fill up this body of water here. Then we get bubble tea, Chinese food, customizable shop, hot dogs, toilets, umbrellas, and the vending machine. And what else is there to go over? The props kind of categories that we get to use, like the themes, are the generic themes: spooky, medieval, steamworks, sci-fi, western, Candyland, and adventure. So we get access to a whole lot of stuff, which is good. And I think I'm going to be going for kind of like a tropical, sort of a tropical, like, wonderland almost. Like, I want this to be super green and colorful and exciting. I don't think I'm going to be referencing kind of what we start with too much. We have this, like, really pretty lighthouse and this kind of dock building. I think I want to go for a different vibe. So we're going to kind of ignore this and come up with our own stuff. We're going to go ahead and research coasters right off the bat because I'm not a fan of this coaster selection. Kind of bored of Wild Mice and Junior Coasters, so it'd be nice to get something else started. And then we have some loans we can take out if we need to, which we probably will. But that's pretty much it. I'll see y'all after this very first time-lapse segment. Alright, so welcome back to another hour-long-ish video. This one is thankfully a little bit shorter than my previous two videos, but still kind of a long one, so sit back, relax, and just enjoy this hour of Parkitect gameplay. So for this specific scenario, I really wanted to go for a very, like, traditional tropical theme. And it was very inspired by this Planet Coaster project that a few different YouTubers collaborated on called Koali Beach. So that was a really big piece of, like, inspiration for me. And then I also saw this, like, Hawaiian Disney resort that I was looking at a bunch of pictures of, and that's kind of where I drew all of the inspiration from for this park. I made a whole Pinterest board, and I was just looking at a bunch of different pictures and coming up with different ideas of how to incorporate this theme. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it ends up coming out. You'll see it in, about an hour. But right now we're just working on this sort of entrance building, and it doubles as a monorail station. So I wanted to have the monorail right here at the park entrance, and then the kind of second station would be on the other side of the park, kind of hidden in the mountain. And I kind of built like a whole like food court area around it. You'll see all of that in the next time lapse, but right now I'm just using shapes and text signs to kind of give more detail than you'd be able to if you were just using the cornice pieces and pillars. So there's a lot of that in this park. I really wanted to have a lot of detail. This is probably my most detailed scenario so far, and I'm really happy with the way it comes out. There's also a lot of foliage. I wanted to try and make it really bright and happy and tropical with a bunch of palm trees and bright, colorful flowers and bushes and all of that stuff. And I use rocks to kind of make natural shaped planners around the paths and stuff like that. So we're working on that a little bit now. And you might notice the time lapse jumping around a little bit or cutting at some parts. I decided to trim this down a little bit because I think the video originally was like an hour and a half before I cut things out. So, and the park ends up not being that big. I just spent a lot of time on little details, just more so than usual. So, to make sure that this was still fun to watch, I trimmed here and there where I felt, whatever I was doing wasn't that important. But there's still quite a lot of footage to get through, and a lot of things to talk about. So, I have, like, my notes here on the side, and I'm just gonna try to make sure that I get to every single topic, but I'll probably end up forgetting something. So now we're working on the park itself, moving on from the entrance area, and I started with a little carousel. I feel like it's such a good ride to kind of have as your very first one. It's not too popular with the guests, but it's such like a classic theme park ride that it feels a little bit wrong to not have a carousel in your park when it's an option. And I'm pretty sure it's, like, always an option. Like, I don't think we've had a scenario so far where we haven't had a carousel. So, something that I did with this park is I used the hay bale prop item to create thatched roofs. And I don't do it in every single building, just a few of them. And this is pretty lag intensive, but as you can see, just stacking a bunch of the hay bales over and over again, you kind of get a thatched roof look, which is what I was going for. With the diagonal, kind of the hay bale on an angle, it's a little bit more tricky because it's stacked on top of another hay bale, and you have to kind of put it in the wall in a way that it won't clip through. So you have to size the prop down and then just like put it in a certain orientation, but once you do that, it gives a nice look. It's a little bit more detailed than if I were to just use the regular roofs, which is what I'm doing here. So there's a lot of different techniques that I used to try and get the look that I was going for. I used cable pieces and text signs. There's a building where you'll see I use the text signs kind of to make ropes wrapped around the pillars, because a lot of my reference images had ropes kind of holding the pillars together. This building is just like a food court-ish building, just like a nice shaded area, because I imagined this is in a really like tropical area where it's very sunny a lot of the time, and our guests would probably want a little bit of shade every once in a while, so they can hang out under that kind of straw roof. And the centerpiece of the park ends up being this swinging ship flat ride, which ends up looking really fun. I surround it with like a bunch of greenery, and it just looks really nice and colorful. And this building right now is the one that I was talking about with the rope text that I kind of did. And I wanted to have this like curved-ish roof, again using the hay bale item. Just playing around with it. It was a little bit finicky. I end up blueprinting it and like moving it up and down a few times, but I think a lot of that gets cut out of the time lapse since, you know, it's just doing what I had already done over and over again. But yeah, this building ends up being nice too. I think all the buildings in this park end up being pretty nice. This specific one was based on a park entrance building in Mexico, I think, of some park. It has like a big volcano in the middle or something like that. And I wanted to have my own version of that entrance building. And so now I'm using the text signs that we get with the Taste of Adventure DLC, I think, is what comes with the text. And I'm just sizing it up and down and trying different letters and different characters and different fonts to get that kind of like crisscross of rope. And it took me quite a long time, but I wanted to keep a lot of this footage in the time-lapse because I feel like it's an interesting process. I don't know. It's not something that I've seen anyone do before, so I thought maybe it would be nice to leave some of it in there. And yeah, I redo it a bunch of times. This took me like a good hour or two, I think, of just playing around with text, and yeah, it's a little bit boring to watch, honestly. But it was fun. I've, just had like some music in the background and got to chill out. That's something that I really like doing with this game. It's very relaxing to me. Getting to work on something like this, especially with a bunch of like little details. I just feel like it's a lot of fun. And yeah, gaming for me is something that I like to do when I want to relax. I don't really love games that are very action-packed or anything like that. I mean, I've played a few pretty action-y games, but most of the time, these like creative games are what really catch me, and kind of pull me in and make me want to play more. So, Parkitect is definitely that for me. And then, working on a bit of a backstage building, I didn't want to have the like typical like gray box buildings behind like the facades, because I knew that I wanted the roller coasters in this park to kind of go over the hills and like go over everything, and I feel like I just didn't want the guests to be able to see all that was going on backstage and like know that it's all a facade. So the buildings in this park are all pretty authentic, I think. They're not really your ordinary theme park building. And yeah, just filling up that kind of planter with a bunch of flowers. And then I did this rock work around all of the like tunnels that I end up having. I have a few. The monorail goes through the cliffs or the mountains or whatever you would call that. And then the inverting coaster that I end up putting in this park also goes through the hills, which is what we're working on right now. So this is just a B&M invert with some terrain-based action. So this would be like a custom layout that the park had made. And I'm really, really happy with this layout. It came about pretty quickly. It wasn't too much of a hassle. At least not this like first kind of section. After the brake run that I put in here, there was a little bit of like fiddling around with the coaster builder to get it back to the station, but it was pretty like straightforward. There wasn't too much work that I had to do on here. But yeah, getting into the break run was a little bit of a challenge, and then this post-break run section was also a little tough. But I got through it in the end, and I'm really happy with the way this layout came around. I wanted to have a lot of diagonal coaster track in this park because watching back, or not watching, looking back at the parks that I have put out on this channel before, I noticed that a lot of the coasters are very stuck to the grid, and that's not something that I'm really looking to have. I really like being able to step away from the grid a little bit. And that's kind of like the biggest limitation of this game, I think, compared to other theme park games that are kind of coming out, is that because this is like kind of an homage to the classic Roller Coaster Tycoon experience, you are really set on the grid. And, you know, it's not totally grid-based. Like, a lot of the detailed items and props and, like, the shapes you can go completely off-grid with, but the walls and the roof pieces are all stuck to the grid, and the coasters are also completely stuck to the grid. So, when you have, like, a specific idea of what you want a coaster to look like in your mind, a lot of the times you have to kind of change it so that it will fit into the grid-based system of the game. So, it wasn't too big of a deal here. I just had to work with the limitations, I guess. So, it's kind of like a pro and a con, I think, of the game, because it's fun to work with limitations, but there are also times where I wish I had a little bit more freedom to do the things that I want to do. But I really only feel that with coasters. Whenever I'm building, I feel like it's not too big of a deal that it's stuck to the grid. But yeah, we have our Enterprise thrill ride that gets shoved into that little corner right there, and then I wanted to have a thrill ride in that helix of the coaster that you might have seen me place down there, and now we're working on the station. So again, the station was based off of, you know, something from my Pinterest board. I wanted to have a lot of different colors of wood in this park, so the station has a bit more of a reddish tone to it of wood. And then just playing around with what I could do with roof, I thought about making a roof out of shapes, or using the hanger pieces to kind of get like a curved roof, but I end up just going with the regular roof pieces for the station building. And I like how it came out. I think it looks pretty similar to the entrance building of the park, which might not be the best, but, you know, there's definitely a look that I'm going for, like a very specific look, and almost every building in this park kind of adheres to that, so there's not too many differences in the way each different building is. I don't know if that made any sense. This wall was inspired by some building in Kawali Beach, that collab park that I had talked about. I just saw it on Google Images when I was looking at inspiration, and I really liked the pattern that they had done, so I wanted to kind of recreate that as best as I could in this game using the text pieces. And I definitely have to play around with the text sign object more, because I never realized how powerful it is for making different angles of, like, beams and things like that in vanilla. Because with mods, this would be so much easier. You know, you could, I think with Transform Anarchy is what it's called, you can, like, rotate items however you want. So I'm trying to go for a similar idea, except with the vanilla game instead. So, you know, that just goes back to what I said about, like, it being fun to play with limitations. For me, I like the idea of having mods in my game and being able to kind of do whatever I want. but at the same time, it's really fun to kind of come up with my own solutions and figure out how I can get the look that I'm going for with all of the vanilla pieces and using pieces in ways that they're not meant to be used and things like that. Something I've been wanting to play around with a little bit is using the like custom sign that you can like put a picture in. I feel like there's a lot of potential to like make textured walls and things like that just using the sign, but I didn't do any of that in this park. Maybe next time. But I'm actually gonna have to end the time lapse here because we're almost beating the scenarios, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. Alright, so we are about to beat the goals for this scenario. I did want to kind of, I don't know, show y'all this later. I wanted to be able to develop the park a little bit more before hopping into the first real-time segment, but, you know, we're so close to getting this done. So, I wanted to make sure that I got this on camera. But I really have not done too much, but it's been taking me a very long time to get through this scenario, because I'm going in heavy with the details. Might be a little bit too much, honestly. I'm feeling a little bit burnt out from, I guess, all of the detail work that I'm doing, but it's not really that much. It's just more than I'm used to, I think. But it's turning out nice, I think. I like how all of the foliage is coming out. It looks really nice and bright and happy and, like, tropical, which is exactly what I was going for. And then this inverted coaster, I am really, really proud of this layout. I think this came out super nice. It was exactly what I was going for, and the timing on this is really, like, spot on. The coaster, like, never stops on the mid-course brake run. And there we go. So, Coral Caldera goals are completed. And we did that pretty quickly, or relatively quickly. Usually it takes a few more years, I think, for me to beat the goals of a campaign. But this one was easy, I think, because it's not about the guest count, it's just about how many tickets we've sold. So, it wasn't that hard to get the numbers up there. But as for the future of this park, I want to, you know, obviously expand and cover up this whole area. My kind of, like, idea for this, having the monorail, like, entrance here, and then, like, you can kind of exit on the other side of the park. I wanted to have, like, a whole kind of, I don't know, like, shopping, food court center, just, like, walking around, kind of elevated over the water here, because a lot of the references that I've been looking at have things on stilts over the water and, like, different levels, and I want to see if I can kind of achieve that look in this game. And it's not something that I've tried before, so I'm excited to see how that turns out. And then I'm also thinking about popping the inverted spinning coaster in here, and kind of having that as our second roller coaster, because this one is medium intensity. I feel like if we get another sort of medium intensity ride with, like, 1 or 2 inversions, which we can do with the inverted spinning coaster, that would kind of, I don't know, be just as good as having, like, a low-intensity roller coaster and a high-intensity roller coaster. I don't know if that, like, works out gameplay-wise and, like, statistics-wise, but in my mind, that kind of makes sense. Like, we could have a family-ish coaster, because, you know, some family coasters go upside down, like, once, so I don't think that would be too bad of an idea. I want to get the wave swinger for sure near the water. I love to do that whenever I have the wave swinger as an option, and then we just have a few more thrill rides to kind of hop around here and there. I was thinking about having the Wipeout or the Twister kind of tucked in this helix. I think would be a nice moment, and would look pretty good. But other than that, I don't really have any set plans. I do kind of want to expand the style of building that I've been going for, into kind of more traditional. Like, I've been looking at some pictures of Bali and, like, seeing where I can take this theme and just, like, build upon it so that it's not the same thing over and over again. But I'm happy with the way this is coming out so far, you know, trying new things out with the paths, kind of getting more organic pathing going on, and there's a little bit of clipping, but honestly, it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. I really thought that the clipping was going to be horrible, but they just walk through kind of like the rocks a little bit, some of the flowers. But yeah, I'm gonna get back into the time lapse and see you guys in a bit. Okay, so we're hopping right back into it with a bit more foliage. It was really important for me to really make this all feel super lush and bright and green and happy. But something that I had a bit of a challenge with was having the foliage that I was placing down kind of blend into the foliage that was already there, that like comes with the scenario, because I didn't want to cover the entire like island in a bunch of the like nice high detail like palm trees, just for performance sake. You know, I end up having to close the park and have all of the guests leave while I'm working on it at some point because there was just a lot going on and my computer was getting really hot, and my laptop's already kind of not the best thing ever, so I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't burning it to a crisp. But now we're working on some custom supports for this inverted ride, since, I don't know, for some reason there weren't really any supports on the loop, so I tried my best to kind of get that B&M feel with the supports, using the shapes, but you know, there's only so much you can do with the shapes, so they don't really have steep angles. That's kind of what the B&M supports have a lot of the time, is like really steep angles that are almost vertical but like not quite, but we only have, you know, 90-degree and 45-degree angles, so there's not too much I could do without mods. That's something that I definitely have to play around with at some point, is support mods, because I feel like it looks so much better when the rides are like realistically supported, and it's tough in this game because, you know, the supports don't go over the paths or anything, so you kind of have to be mindful of where you have the paths so that it doesn't like chop a support in half or whatever. So here I'm just kind of planning out what I'm gonna do, so just putting down the rides and then I'll work on, you know, decorating them later. And then I also wanted to have more information kiosks and the money, like ATM machine, just for like gameplay purposes, and I don't know, I think they look nice. They're kind of the only shops that are like booth kind of looking, so I think they fit nicely in with this park. They're kind of colorful too. But here we're just working on covering up the teacups building, or the teacups ride, with a building, and I wanted to have this curved roof made out of the hay bales to, you know, give that look of like straw. So I just used some of the shapes to kind of set like a guide for myself, and then covered it up with the hay bales as best as I could. I wish there was a way to have it like a bit more smooth, but you know, the blocky look isn't too bad. It kind of fits in with like the whole Parkitect aesthetic of being like, I don't know, simple and like minimalistic. But yeah, I like that building. It didn't take too long, which was nice. A lot of these buildings took quite a long time, but at this point I already know what I'm doing with this theme. There's not so much experimenting going on anymore, and I'm just like going with whatever pops into my head. And that little path cover that I just made, that's like kind of like black, I end up blueprinting that and using it a few different times, because I really like the way that it came out. I don't know why, like the pyramid little decoration. And now we're working on the transfer track cover and brake run cover for the inverted coaster, but we actually skip through a lot of it just because it's the exact same style as the entrance building for that station, or the station building for that coaster. And so I didn't want to have that in there again. You know, I'm figuring out how to get these videos to be a little bit more condensed, because it's not really sustainable, I don't think, to keep making these hour-long videos. And I've heard from some people that they would prefer kind of a shorter format. So I don't know, I've been thinking about maybe cutting down on how much of the time-lapse I show, and maybe have more of like real-time segments where I could just talk through what I did, if that makes sense. But yeah, I still have to kind of play around with that. I'm still like super new to all of this, so it's harder than I thought it would be, honestly, cutting down videos, because I never know what I should and shouldn't show. But now we're working on maybe my favorite coaster in this park, the inverting spinning coaster. So this is based on the Mack Rides Extreme Coaster, I think is what it's called. And so there's a few of these around the world that I kind of took inspiration from, but mostly Ride to Happiness. It's just like a launched coaster. I think it's a double launched coaster of this model, and it looks really, really fun. You know, I haven't ever been on it. I don't know if I'll be able to ever go on it, since it's like on the other side of the world, but you know, maybe someday. But this layout was pretty tricky. It took me a long time to figure out all of this, because I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted exactly. I knew that I wanted like a launch, and I wanted it to go and like have helixes kind of over the hill area, and that was it. So I just play around with this layout for a pretty long time, but I didn't want to cut too much of it out because I feel like it's important to kind of show that process, and I don't know, so y'all can see kind of what goes through my mind when I'm like planning out a coaster like this. And I don't know if this coaster is too realistic. It's probably not realistic at all. I tried looking at the layouts for a lot of these coasters, but I had such a hard time figuring out what was going on, since all of the POV videos are like spinning around like crazy. So I was so disoriented just watching the video. I could only like imagine what it would be like to actually ride one of these. It must be super crazy. But yeah, so because of that, I didn't really know what these rides are really like in real life, and I didn't really find any great pictures of like the layout or anything, so I kind of just winged it, and it ends up being a lot of helixes and corkscrews and zero-G rolls. And that's kind of like the main motif, I guess, of this ride is you like go into a helix and then like a corkscrew and then another helix and then like another inversion, and it just kind of does that a few times until it gets to the station. But yeah, you'll see like pretty much all of the stuff that I'm doing right now, like none of that really stays. I start over with this layout. But you should have seen a little bit of a cut there. We're kind of hopping a couple hours, I think, into the future. This took me a really long time. And yeah, there's going to be another cut where you'll kind of see the coaster being finished, and we're going to start working on the station soon. But yeah, just getting it back to the station or back into the brake run. It's always a bit tricky. I feel like no matter what I do, it's always like hard to get a coaster back into the brakes. But it really, really helps me to have the brake run set up before I kind of get to the end of the building process, if that makes sense. So just having it there, and with this game's kind of auto snap feature, it's super useful, and it makes my life a lot easier. So here is kind of the finished layout. We'll ride through it in the next real-time segment, or the next and final real-time segment, but now we are going to work a little bit more on expanding this area because I wanted to have kind of a sub-area, I guess, in this park. And this area is more inspired by architecture from Bali and a lot of like Indonesian architecture. So they have kind of like curved roofs, and I feel like a lot of the roofs are darker colors and not necessarily like the yellow straw that you see a lot of the times. So this station was a lot of fun to work on. I really wanted to get a lot of details in there and kind of play around with things that I haven't done before, since this is a brand new style for me, so I could really branch out and kind of do whatever, because there's so much variety in this architecture. Like all of the inspiration that I saw, like all of it was a little bit different from the last. So there's definitely room to like use your imagination and see what comes out of it. But yeah, I really like this station. I used the like gravestone kind of item to have these little decorations on the corner of the roof that I saw a lot. And then we also kind of put like a tower temple, I think is what it is. Just like as a queue decoration, so the guests have something to look at while they're waiting in the line for this coaster. And then there's also a lot of like black stone. So I tried to replicate that with the cubes, and then having like the dark fence right there. And then this was just like kind of me improvising and trying to get a similar feel to some of the decorations that are on a lot of the walls in these buildings that I was looking at. You know, they are like very intricate patterns and stuff like etched into the stone, which isn't exactly possible in this game. So I tried to kind of go for a representation of that. And a lot of the adventure theme items were really useful for this. I used a lot of the pyramid piece and some of like the skull decorations and things like that. So here you can see me working on the tower that I was just talking about. And I used the pyramid top decoration to kind of create these roofs, because there's like a bunch of roofs stacked on top of each other and they get smaller and smaller as you go up. But they're not very high-pitched roofs. They're kind of flat, so I could have used the pyramid shape item, but it was a bit too steep for me, so I used this instead. And, you know, placing them in different, like, grid orientations, like how you can change the division of the grid. That was really useful when I was making this, so that I could really get small variations in the sort of taper up to the top point. And then I'm just going in and using a lot of the same things that I've been using this whole time. So there's some pillars in there, and there's some text signs, and then I have these red and white flags, like the Indonesian flag, but the flag of Indonesia is horizontal striped, so we don't have that in Parkitect, so I just went for the vertical stripe. Maybe this is like in an alternate universe where whoever designed that flag decided to have it be vertical instead. And yeah, the brake run cover is more of the same. It's like this exact same style, really, just a different like roof color. And then I used the pyramid pieces to have this kind of sloped foundation, which I saw a lot too when I was looking for reference. And I think it came out together pretty nice. I like how this station kind of also serves as a backdrop for this top spin ride that I put right in front of it. I really like this kind of mini area, you know. I maybe would have liked to expand it a little bit more, but the park is not that big. So I kind of had to just go with it. And yeah, I think it might be my favorite little area of the park. But now we're just working on a few more food shop buildings, using the hay bales again to create different variations of this roof. So this was just based on like the gentle slope roof piece. So the same idea as the one that I did before with the hay bale that's like at a slope, except this time it's not sloped. And I don't know which one I like the look of better. I think the sloped one might look a bit cleaner, but because the hay bale pieces are so small, since you have to kind of size them down so they don't clip through anything, it kind of, I don't know, I feel like it might be a little bit too detailed compared to the rest of the game, whereas with the kind of blockier roof, it kind of blends in a little bit better. But yeah, something else that I decided to do with this park is have all of these rocks lining the paths with the burial mound item, I think is what it's called. So just coloring that to be the same color as the sand, and then, you know, you can kind of put it over the path in like a curved shape. And then if you cover the borders with rocks and put a bunch of plants on it, you can't really tell that there's anything there. And, you know, the guests do kind of clip through it sometimes, but I feel like for the most part, they, you know, tend to stay in the middle of the path. So it's not too big of an issue. And yeah, if you just don't pay too much attention to it, it doesn't really bother me. And then I did the same thing, except on the grass, so recoloring that burial mound item to the color of the grass, and I have that as another kind of like option to line the path. And I think it turns out really nice. It is really tedious placing down all of the rocks by hand and covering it all up with, you know, different types of foliage, and then I also didn't want all of the foliage to look exactly the same, so you have to size some of it down and, you know, just like change the size around a little bit, and then change the colors a little bit too. So it's a lot, but I think it turns out really nice. It gives a really nice, like, effect to everything, and it doesn't look too vanilla to me. It kind of looks like it could be a path cover mod, which is what I'm going for. You know, I want this to look as much modded as it can be, because, you know, with mods, you can kind of do anything, and I'm trying to do what you can do with mods in vanilla. So, that's kind of my way of doing so. And there's quite a lot of footage in this recording of me just going in with different trees and whatnot and covering up most of the grass around all of these buildings. But yeah, at this point, there's not really any big buildings left to work on. I don't put down any other rides, and I don't put down any other, like, roller coasters or anything like that. But there is kind of like a food court shopping area that you'll see pop up in a little bit, but right now I'm just working on kind of the small details that don't seem like they matter until you kind of do it, and I don't know, I feel like it really helps the whole park come together. In the end, when you focus on everything and not just on the big stuff, and, you know, it it is kind of a rewarding process, I feel like, when you put a lot of work into a park and then it kind of just all comes together in the end. I mean, for me, I doubt myself a lot while I'm building, and I have to tell myself that, like, I just have to trust the process, you know, and that it'll all kind of come together once I have it all set in place. So now we're working on getting the Twister ride decorated to, you know, as much as it kind of has to be decorated. And we're now moving on to another kind of fun part of this park, and that is this shopping center that I wanted to have on the other side of the park. So you could either walk all the way across and get here, or if you get on the monorail, it'll drop you off right there, inside of, like, the mountain area. So this was inspired by pictures that I saw of these, like, hillside villages where they build a bunch of buildings kind of supported by stilts and wooden beams and supports and all of that stuff. And they just kind of sit on the edge of the mountains, right up against the water, and it's really nice and, like, scenic and beautiful, really. And I wanted to have that same feel here, but on a smaller scale. And then a lot of, like, the little mountainside villages that I would see didn't really have a lot of variety in the buildings, so I wanted to try and have some variety here. I do blueprint that building, but all of the other ones are completely unique. And yeah, so I wanted to have, like, different roof colors and kind of different shapes, so I used the hay bale again to kind of have, like, a curved roof, and then we have kind of, like, the sloped roof here, and, you know, that's kind of it. I mean, it's just buildings in the same style that I've already done. They're pretty simple, not too crazy, because at this point I was really, I wouldn't say, like, totally done with this scenario, but I was definitely ready to get things wrapped up. So I didn't want to spend too much time on all of this. And I really didn't. It took, like, an hour and a half, maybe, to get all of these buildings done. So, super quick, kind of. You know, just put some music on, or, like, a nice video essay. I love building with a video essay in the background. Or, like, hopping on a call with my friends, stuff like that. And it kind of helps to keep me in it, I guess. Because the way that I play this game is I kind of have little short bursts of, like, inspiration. So I'll sit down and play for, like, 45 minutes at a time, or, like, an hour at a time, and then I'll go do something else, and then come back to it a little bit later. I feel like when I sit down and just knock a park out in, like, one sitting, I don't know, I feel like my kind of creative juices aren't as juicy, you know? It's definitely a part of my process is taking a lot of breaks, which is part of why these videos take kind of a while to come out, but I'm happy with the rate that these are coming out at. You know, like, every couple weeks, I think, is when I'm putting these videos out, which is pretty solid, you know, considering how much work I put into them. So I'm happy with all of that. And I'm also very happy with how this park is coming out. This might be my favorite scenario, actually. So, with that being said, let's hop into our final park overview. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coral Caldera. So, I'm really happy with the way this park came out. It's definitely smaller scale than Western Roundup was, and maybe even Victoria Lake, but, you know, I'm really happy with all of the detail that I kind of managed to cram in here. I'm pretty sure in the last time-lapse, we kind of worked a lot on this area, and then this is kind of like the second time-lapse, so we'll just kind of fly around here for a little bit so y'all can see what I've been up to. This inverting spinning coaster was a lot of fun to work on. The layout took a very long time, but I like how it came out. This is honestly probably one of the coasters that I'm most proud of so far. And this is kind of based off of Mack Ride's, it's called the Extreme Spinning Coaster. So some of them are like launched. This was kind of like time traveler-esque, a little bit more terrain conforming. I wanted to kind of have this like over the cliff moment. And yeah, I like how that came out. And then here's just like a kind of food court area inspired by like villages that you'll see kind of creeping along like the edges of mountains and right on the shore. So that was fun. And then the railway kind of loops around and pops out over here. And yeah, there's just a few thrill rides here and there. There's not like too many. The park's kind of, it's not very big, and I really wanted to have a lot of path work. I wanted to have like big open areas. But we can go ahead and hop on the inverted coaster. It'll pop out of the station in just a second. So this is just a very typical B&M inverted coaster with a kind of like terrain conforming twist, I guess. And yeah, the layout is simple. You know, it's like a loop and then a zero-G roll, and then some like twists and corkscrews, and that's it. But I'm really happy with the pacing of this coaster. I feel like it really slows down when it has to, like right at the top of the loop to give like some good, what's it called, like hang time? I don't know. But yeah, this was a fun coaster to work on for sure. I tried to use a lot of diagonal track elements when putting these coasters together, and then we also make use of some custom supports here and there because of all the path work that I have, and then all of the trees. A lot of the supports got kind of taken out. So this is custom supported, and then over here, these are all custom supports to hold the catwalk. And then I wanted to have transfer tracks, because I got a comment on the last video saying that I should have transfer tracks, and I agree. But apparently, someone said in the Discord that this isn't how transfer tracks really work. So sorry about that. I really, truly have no idea how they work. I thought they were just like a track next to the brake run, but I think there's probably more to it than that. So I'll have to look into that before the next park. And then over here, we can go ahead and ride the inverting spinning coaster, which, like I said, took quite a long time, but I think it was worth it. This is probably one of my favorite coasters that I've worked on. I wanted to have this water feature, so I used the effects controller for the first time to have the water kind of spray as it launches and then goes into this loop, or half loop, and then it kind of just goes over the mountainside here into like a little zero-G roll, which was made with like a diagonal corkscrew, lots of diagonal building. using the diagonal track parts. And yeah, looking at like POVs of different coasters that Mac Rides has put out, and kind of like being inspired by that really helps me to get this layout done. And I'm really happy with it. I think it's nice, and I don't know. It's also like I'm happy with the pacing of it. I think it keeps a really good speed when it has to. So that's kind of it for the coasters. I'm trying to think of something else to talk about, but yeah, this was kind of going into like a different architectural style than the rest of the park, kind of having like a little mini sub area, I guess you could call it. And I think that's about it for this park. Yeah, I've been working on this for quite a long time, but yeah, I'm definitely burnt out with this style. I want to move into something a little bit different, but I'm happy with the way this came out. I did also work on lighting, but not too much. I didn't want it to be like crazy colorful or anything, just kind of like warm colors here and there. I put some lights over here in like the tunnels. Makes it kind of look, I don't know, a little like magical. And yeah, that is it for Coral Caldera. We'll just save for the final time. And I did already, you know, get out of the park after beating the scenario, so this lighthouse is what we get as like our monument trophy celebrating the fact that we beat the campaign, or we beat the scenario. And we should be moving on to Mystic Oasis, but a little part of me kind of wants to move on to Nova Labs, just because the past 3 scenarios that we've done have been like kind of not very modern styles, and I feel like I could work with kind of like a modern style for Nova Labs to kind of, I don't know, something a little different. I've been wanting to switch it up a little bit, but we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises because I'm not 100% set on which one of these I'm going to do yet. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!